hi or good evening. I don't know which point of the globe you are now at.
Good morning.
It's good morning.
Good morning from
Hi,
this
good
end.
morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Okay, Hadir, good morning. I can see you are online. I just haven't heard you yet. Hadir Ali.
Soon
Okay.
she will be with us. Should be.
Yes. Nice to see you, Hyderabad. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, so I hope then everybody who would like to, we have altogether 8 participants, but the staff, good morning, nice to see
Good
you.
morning.
Staff from, so we have 2 centers now here, 2 centers represented, CEO Business School and Tufts Management School. And I understand that Tufts Management School staff registered kind of last minute, so they might not be so well prepared. But I hope to bring it all together and deliver a nice training. So for those who don't know me, my name is Bernadette Dekany. I started with ATAG like 6 years ago, and before I was delivering ATAG training myself as well. So I've been in your shoes, and I try to build on that experience as well as an internal verifier and assessor myself. And for 6 years now, I'm an external quality assurer with ATAG and also regional standards manager. So in this capacity, I'm delivering trainings as well. Today, I would like to go through the entire delivery and assessment process of ATAG qualifications and answer any questions that you may have in these areas. Questions anytime. Don't feel bad to interrupt me. It's good to clarify whatever query you have at the time when it comes. So don't keep it to the end, but we will also have a discussion session at the very end. This training is scheduled for 2 hours, but if there are more queries, then we might overrun a bit. But in terms of the activities, I try to be conscious of the time and keep it. But as I said, questions are very, very important because that's the whole purpose of doing a live training. So that's why I would like to give the flexibility of questions anytime. Any questions, requests, comments, issues at this point?
No, we are all ears.
All ears, that's great. Okay. Then let me start with the introduction of ATAG. I will share my screen and hope that you will all be able to see. Yes. So can you see my screen with the ATAG's full name on the, okay, good.
Yeah.
Awards
Yes.
for Training and Higher Education. So that's our full name. And we are a UK government regulated awarding organization since 2011, recognized by Ofqual and Qualifications WAS and some other international agencies and governments as well.
By the way, Bernadette, sorry for
Yes.
interruption, but are you recording this meeting?
No, we normally don't record because normally we don't have the agreement of every participant to record. But if everyone is in agreement, then I'm happy to record it.
I believe that would be better, so we
Yeah.
can have a copy of the recorded in case if we miss anything during the training, at least we have a reference to go back for.
Okay, so can
Is
I ask?
anybody objecting to that
You have my agreement.
agreement?
You have my agreement as well.
Great,
Agree.
great. Thank you. So you have the green light now, Bernadette.
Okay, anybody objecting? Because some people haven't said a word yet.
I think no.
Okay. Okay. Agreement then. Okay, then let me start. I think I have to stop sharing to start recording. So just a second then. Long time since I last had to record. Sorry, just a second. Microphone. Cool. No. Yes. Okay. Okay, so this is recording, I guess. Oh no, this is writing.
Oh, no, it's about that.
Okay. I'm not sure this is the, because that seems to be only doing voice recording. I don't think, anyway, I can do a voice recording, that's for sure. I don't want to, it doesn't seem to allow me to, yeah, recording. Okay, it will be a recording, okay. So, okay, so this is the recording and we have agreed that nobody has any objection against the recording.
Yeah.
This training. So let me then share my screen. And we are at the introductory session of ATAG. So our ownership is based in Dubai since 2016 as part of Knowledge Educate, which is a global group of educational institutions. The board directors of ATAG all have senior careers in business and further higher education in the UK and globally as well, supporting learner progression in business and to universities as well. Myself being one of the most global parts of ATAG, as I'm based in Hungary, not in the UK at the moment. I used to be based in the UK as well. ATAG has a global profile, working with 280 centers in over 50 countries currently, and it's growing. Diverse portfolio of vocationally oriented and international recognized qualifications, many of them eligible for UK funding. For example, the Level 3 Health and Social Care qualification is eligible for UK funding. We have over 120 regulated qualifications ranging from business and management, health and social care, bespoke qualifications in teaching, religious studies, and risk management as well. We have approved progression routes to bachelor's and master's top-up degrees with over 20 UK and some other international universities as well, which can mean a significant time and cost saving for ATAG learners. We have already certified over 40,000 learners for ATAG qualifications and endorsed programs as well globally since 2011. Being regulated by Ofqual and other regulators as well, these mean some implications for the centers as well for you. And these include registering learners in accordance with the stated timescales, which is 28 days from enrollment. You have to register the learners with ATAG as well. We expect that you respond to the information requests that you receive from us in a timely manner. You should ensure that you always have the right resources in place to provide a quality learning experience for students, and you should have the right policies in place which are implemented: health and safety, equality and diversity policy, appeals policy, etc. These were checked at the time of your center was at the time of the health check. We used to call this quality check. It's now center recognition quality assurance check, and these are regularly monitored later on as well. There are 3 types of visits that we make to centers, most of them remote. The first one is the health check, now center quality assurance check, which enables ATAG to learn more about the center and how it operates. And based on the information, judgments are made, which means that in case some key areas were not covered or not satisfactorily covered by the center, then some action points are raised, and these are then monitored. Their completion are monitored by ATAG. Then annually or biannually or once in every 3 years, we do a monitoring and development visit. The frequency depends on the volume of business, so to say, so the number of learners registered with ATAG. And this monitoring and development visit enable ATAG to check progress with the delivery of training, learning, assessment, and the effectiveness of quality assurance measures as well. And then we have the moderation visits. These used to be called verification visits. These are practically initiated by the center. So when your learners have completed a qualification or a certain number of units that you would want to have certified. Then you submit the results to us, and these enable ATAG to judge the accuracy of internal assessment decisions. And these are the visits where the outcomes lead to certification of learners. So these are the official milestones where we definitely meet with ATAG. I mean, with your center, ATAG and your center. Any comments or questions at this point?
I have one point here to clarify. Yes. According to our experience together, regarding the assessment, internal assessment and training for external verification, yes, you have asked for samples for each learner, okay? And some samples have been passed the verification, and some are not, okay? And those who are passed the assessment, external verification, it came to our surprise that we have got certification for this unit only, which passed. And if that's the case, why we choose samples? Why we don't send all the assignment answers all together to be verified, especially if we are verifying samples internally and externally? So it should reflect on all the units, or should only give us a guide, and then we have to review all the assignments answers and then to graduate them or to give them certification. This was confusing to me. Why we choose samples as far as we have to go for all the units answers?
Yes, that's a very good question. And to clarify the query to everyone, because maybe not everybody has the experience that you already have. So when you submit results of learners, that means that the assessment cycle has already been completed on your end, which includes an assessment where the assessor checks every single piece of learner work and confirms the achievement. If not, then refers back to the learner, and then the assessment is completed again. And then an internal quality assurance is completed as well, which can check all the pieces of the learner work or just samples. And when you submit it to us, then the external quality assurance takes place, or moderation, we also call it, and we sample. We always sample, because that's not assessment. So what we do is not a third layer of assessment or a third round of assessing the learner work. What ATAG's role is to ensure that the assessment practice is properly done. So it's not really checking how the learner work was completed. The focus is rather on the assessment cycle and to see the quality of the assessment cycle. But for this, obviously, we need the learner work because the outcome is a certification.
Okay, so, very good. Very good. Yeah. And then if the learner passed this sample of checking or moderation, and according to your choice of which unit should be reviewed, okay? But why? And then what? Then what is the next step?
Yes.
Should we send the rest of all units of the same learner again to you, or you will give certification for all the rest of units as far as what I understand, if he passed one and this was a sample for this learner, it should reflect positively on all the other units, and then he can be graduated.
Yes. Yes,
but
exactly.
If he failed according to measures, we have to review all the other units for him to know which is failed and which is not, right?
Exactly, yes. So there can be different outcomes of the moderation visit. One is where all the learners, all the sampled units have clearly passed, then obviously the rest of the units are passed as well, those which were out of the sample. In case there are some failures, then the EQA, the EQA who completes the moderation can make the decision that these are isolated cases. For example, this learner misunderstood one learning outcome together with the assessor, if that has reached us, but this seems to be an isolated case. Or for example, if there is plagiarism, but that's only some part of the learner work where for whatever reason the learner struggled to provide own evidence, obviously that unit will be failed. But if it's just one learning outcome and not so significant plagiarism, etc., then the rest of the sample, maybe we select another sample from the learner. That's what personally I do. If it's a borderline case, then I ask for another sample from either from that unit, from another learner, or from another unit from the same learner, to see if it's a borderline, but in which direction should the decision go. And then we can either make the decision that the non-sampled units are passed, or no, this is really insecure achievement, and the center should review all its submission along these guidelines: plagiarism, sufficient evidence for learning outcome, proper understanding, etc.
Fine, I understand.
That can be different.
Very nice. That's I agree with you on that, and that's fair. But for those who passed already, I mean, whatever they got, merit or pass or distinction, whatever. Okay. As far as the sample passed your moderation, I believe we should receive the graduation for all the units for this learner, isn't it?
Not necessarily, as I said, so it's about the entire assessment process. So that's what we are looking at.
As I said, the entire assessment said the end result is passed. The end result is successful sample, regardless the grade, okay, whether it's passed or merit or distinction.
Yeah, obviously.
But by the end, it's passed, okay? It means successful. So what I understood earlier, that it should reflect positively on all the other units of the same learner, so he should be graduated. No need to revise all the other units for the same learner as far as he passes the sample. The one who failed should be directed to the proper direction for this unit, and we have to revise the other units of the same failed one. Right.
No, as I said, we are looking at the entire assessment practice of the center. So when all the learners have safely passed, it shows that the assessment is secure at the center, and then clearly all learners will pass. But since our sampling rule is normally that we have 10 learners plus 10%, we don't even look at every learner in some case. For example, I have now a moderation with 80 learners. I'm looking at only 18 learners, 17, 10 plus 10%. Okay. So if I see that some units are achieved and some are not, then yes, there could be that 60 learners will fail without us looking at it. Because I see that out of the 17 units, for example, 10 failed. Then definitely assessment practice is not good at the center. It's not secure. It doesn't show sufficient. We will talk more about this. Let me now move on, because
as I see, we cannot deal with the learners as a group of like each other or the center like that, because there are different individuals from different backgrounds, from different backgrounds, from different understanding. So as far as we are dealing with individuals, we have to judge them as individuals. And as far as they passed, they passed. If they failed, we have to revise their situation and to direct them. That's my view and my opinion on that. And we have to reconsider that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I will talk about this because this is about the system of the criterion-based assessment. It's just 1 second that we get there. So let me get there, and then I will explain this.
Okay. Thank you.
So because actually this is our next presentation activity too. Let me bring this up. Yes, and this is the moment where I will also show you the portal. Just a second. Yes. Okay. So you have this center portal, and I don't know if I just want to show you now where you can find all the qualification related documents before I talk about these documents. So this is our center portal, and I hope most of you have access to it. If not, you can always request access through our support team. Just send an email to support@ath.co.uk. And the reason why this portal is very useful, because this is where you will find a lot of templates, qualification specification, the assignments, which are practically the tasks for the learners to complete. And this is where you will find it under the qualifications tab. You go to qualification guidance, And this is the most useful part for an assessor of our portal. Here you have a list of all the qualifications that we have. So for example, the level 3, which will be our example today, level 3 in business and management. Under this folder, you will find all the assignments, the qualification specification. I will show you examples in a second. And this is where you have all the templates that you can use if you wish in assessment, mark sheets, which we call assignment front sheet, or guidance and assessment feedback, observation record sheet that's optional to use, sample curriculum plan, etc. And you also have training videos here, which you can find at the top. You can access our training videos here, which cover registration, assessment, internal quality assurance, grading as well. But we will cover all this today. But in case you want a refreshment, then you can also go there as well. Right, so that's about our portal. And now let's see how these documents will help you in understanding the structure of ATHE qualifications. So this is an example of a qualification. Now this is, I've taken this from the level 4 extended diploma in business and management, because this is a bit more complex qualification than some other. In many units, you only have mandatory, in many qualifications, you only have mandatory units. In the level 4 business and management, you have optional as well. So what this means in delivery is that the center has to make the decision of how learners can choose from these units. The first 4 units are mandatory, all learners should complete them, and then they can select additional, they have to select additional 4 to complete the 120 credit value. And some centers will not have the capacity to deliver all these qualifications. So they will have to make the decision at the beginning, before they issue the curriculum plan and before they recruit learners, whether they select certain units from this list and then they will offer only those, or they say that these, let's say 4 units we are able to deliver, we have the staff capacity, for example, for it. And then the other 6, we will let the learner complete it at their own pace and at their own limit, for example, through recording training videos and providing only one-to-one sessions to them, maybe because they don't make up a whole group. You still have to have the staff capacity for it, but maybe not in group classes organized for them, because you only have 1 or 2 learners for administrative services, for example. So this has a strong, significant implication to planning the curriculum for the learners, and that's important to make. As you see, all units have a credit value. In this qualification, it's equal, so the units are weighted equally, but it's not necessarily the case in other qualifications. And the GLH is the recommended guiding learning hours for the learners. So these include group discussions, one-to-one lessons, tutoring, etc. So any learning hour where the research as well, but the learner receives guidance from the center. A curriculum plan should be designed by the center for each of the qualifications that that you deliver, and we request you to send this to us a month. Specifically 4 weeks before you start delivering the qualification. So in case there are any issues with it, we can flag it and let you know. Because, for example, there are some units, finance is always a special unit in any qualifications. Most of the learners will perform either a lot better or a lot worse in finance than in any other unit. So that normally requires special attention. Because that's somehow just special. I don't really understand why, but the financial skills are very different from the rest of the skills that are needed for these units. Many of the mandatory units are kind of theoretical or introductory, the communication skills, the business environment, so they can be the starting units in the curriculum plan, but anything to do with research, for example, I think in the people in organizations, they have to choose a company and look at the HR principles, practices, processes of that company. So that needs time. So normally that's better placed in the curriculum with a longer schedule. but that goes for other level 7. They do have to do research for half of the units, if I remember well. So it has to be calculated for the learners, otherwise they will just go over the deadline for submission. Right. Within the qualification specification, for each unit you will find this table, learning outcomes and assessment criteria. So these are what we call standards of the qualification. So, and this is where we talk about criterion-based assessment. So in our system, in the for many awarding bodies, many other awarding bodies, this is also valid, but especially for ATAG, then we go by criteria when assessing the work of a learner. So regardless of how, it's cruel to say, it's very bad to say, but regardless of how much effort the learner has put into achieving the qualification, assessment is solely based on whether the learning outcomes and assessment criteria have been achieved or not. And it doesn't matter if, and this is why I said that it's important that assessment is accurate, is according to standards at the center, because this is what assessors really have to understand, that we can't just give a pass to a learner when they have worked hard. For example, they started with kind of 0 English at our center. It took them 2 years to come to a strong advanced level to be able to start writing the assignment. And then they have, in 1 whole year, they have managed to write something for each of the units, which have been submitted and then awarded as pass. The only important thing is whether they have achieved the learning outcome at the standards, meaning along these criteria, or not. And if the assessors are not assessing the learner along these criteria, then we say it's insecure because they don't really apply the criteria that should be applied. So then we just don't have we cannot do ATAG. When I say we, ATAG cannot do 100% sampling. We only do 100% sampling when there is only 1 learner, and then we assess every single unit. Because our job is to ensure that assessment is done with the understanding of the command verbs here. I will talk about those in a second, and with the understanding of what is the exact task for the learner and what is the level of or the sufficiency of evidence that we need to say that yes, this unit has been achieved with pass, merit, or whatever grade. So even though some learners, for example, with borderline achievement complete most of the learning outcomes, it could be that the rest of the units will be failed for that learner and for other learners as well, because assessment is still very insecure. And so that's the key aspect in moderation. So these are for the business environment unit. This is level 4 still, yes. We have only 3 learning outcomes, and for each of the learning outcomes we have 2 or 3 assessment criteria, and the learners have to achieve all of the learning outcomes, every single one of the learning outcome to achieve the unit. We have occupation-based qualifications and knowledge-based qualifications. Business is a knowledge-based qualification, while training and education would be an occupation-based. Also, many of our bespoke qualifications, risk management, terrorism, etc., these are occupation-based qualifications. The difference in assessment is that for knowledge-based qualifications like business, the focus is on learning outcomes. Has the learner achieved the learning outcome at the level of the qualification? For occupation-based qualifications, the learners have to achieve every single assessment criteria as well. So, for example, when we talk about the business qualification, where the focus is on learning outcomes, we look at learning outcome 1, understand types of organizations and their purposes. And then we look at the assessment criteria. First one is about types of organizations, second, purposes of types of organizations, and the third is about the responsibilities of organizations. Now, if you look at these 3, the third one is not so essential to achieve the learning outcome. So if the learner has properly explained the different types of organizations, private and public, because that's normally an issue that learners would only talk about private organizations. And so if the learner has properly explained private and public types of organizations, and their purposes, then they would achieve the learning outcome 1, even if they didn't really cover responsibilities. So this is how we are working on all our qualifications to clarify which are the mandatory and which are the optional assessment criteria. But this shift in assessment strategies is recent. So currently, this is in communication, but we are working on the qualification specification review as well. So focus is on the learning outcomes in business qualifications. Command verbs, as I said, they are very, very important because these set the level of depth, the level of analysis or examination that the learner has to do when completing the learning outcome. These have a hierarchy, not so much hierarchical, these have an increasing significance from level 3 to level 7. So at level 3, you would mostly find explain, discuss, describe, etc. And at level 7, most of the command verbs will be analyze, examine, investigate, evaluate, etc. So these are very, very different, and it's important that learners and assessors understand it. That when you explain something, then you define it. You show its place in business, its significance. When you discuss something, then again you show how it is in the business context used in general. Analysis is about breaking it down into smaller pieces and talk about the elements and how they talk how they put together the concept. For example, when you have to analyze marketing strategies, then you have to identify different marketing strategies. Very often a cause for failure is that learners only talk about marketing strategies in general without naming any specific strategy, without using examples. So this is how I will talk more about the higher level command verbs, so especially because CEO Business School, for example, is focusing on level 7 business qualification. So I want to highlight that, but it's just important to understand the order. We have assessment criteria for pass, merit, and distinction grades. And we will talk more about this, the higher grades as well, but you will find the location of the tasks or criteria for higher grades is set again in this qualification specification. We talk about its system a bit later. Still within the qualification specification, for each unit, you have an indicative content, which is what it says. It's indicative. So it's not a list of the terms that learners should go through and write about in their assignment, not necessarily. This is rather a guidance about what we mean by the assessment criteria. So for example, as I said, when the learning outcome is understand types of organizations, many learners would only think of private types. And they would talk about sole proprietorship and partnership and private limited companies, etc. But they wouldn't mention government related types at all. And that's an issue because that should be part of the learning outcome. And this is where we clarify this, include private, public, government, voluntary, charitable organizations as well. Again, purposes or responsibilities. Those who are new to business, and definitely a level 3, level 4 business learner would probably be new to the business world in general. So for them, it's important to identify what we mean by responsibility. So this is moving towards a teaching guidance or teaching material, but that's also a helpful reference point for learners. Then the grade of the qualification. So assessment is completed on the basis of achievement of the learning outcome at the standards set by the assessment criteria in each unit. So the first task is for the assessors and verifiers as well, is to establish, has the learning outcome been achieved at least at a pass grade. So this is done by focusing on the learning outcome. And if the learner completes the rest of the tasks as well, then they can achieve a pass, they can achieve a merit or a distinction as well. Normally the units are equally weighted, but not necessarily, as I said, in terms of credit value. And as well as receiving a grade for each individual unit, the learners will receive an overall grade for the qualification as well. So when they receive the 15-point credit for that unit, it will be weighed weighted, sorry, to calculate an overall grade for the qualification, and that will decide whether it's a merit diploma or a distinction diploma. The calculation of the overall qualification grade is based on this student's performance in all units and the points gained from all credits required for the diploma or extended diplomas. The learner must have attempted the valid combination of units. The formula for establishing the overall grade is as follows. By the valid combination of units, what I mean is that if there are mandatory units to be completed, they have to be completed. So just by collecting 120 credit, they don't necessarily achieve the level 4 business and management diploma if they have only completed optional or mostly optional units. This is the calculation for the higher grades in level. This is for level 4 extended diploma. So here every unit gets 15 credit. The learner gets a pass if they have achieved the learning outcomes at the standard stated in PASS assessment criteria, 40 points. They can only get a merit if they have achieved the learning outcomes at the PASS level and in addition completed all the merit assessment criteria. So here, if you remember, let me go back a few slides. We had 2 merit tasks, 1M1 and 3M1. So the learners will get a merit grade if they have completed both of these at a satisfactory level. They have assessed the extent to which a specific organization meets its stated purposes. They have selected an organization and they have assessed how they meet their stated purposes, and they have also assessed the response of a named organization to changes in its market. If they have only completed 1 merit and even 1 distinction, it's still a pass because they haven't completed both of the merit tasks. They can get a distinction if they have completed everything, and they can only get a distinction if they have completed, if they have achieved the learning outcomes at the PASS level, and they have completed all the merit and all the distinction tasks in the unit. In this case, there is only 1 distinction task for them, but that has to be completed to achieve the distinction. Is this clear? Because I know it's not an easy, because normally merit and distinction is given, again, recognizing the efforts or the high performance of learners. But again, in our case, this is solely based on whether the criteria have been met or not. So I know it's not so easy or so familiar maybe to all assessors. Any comments or questions on this? Yet?
No, it's clear now. I believe it's clear now.
Then going back to the calculation, so they get, for a merit unit, they get 53 points. For a distinction unit, they get 66 points. And for the overall qualification grade, these are added. And then we have this scale that if they achieve this, between 320 and 384 points, they get a pass. We have the merit and distinction. In general, if most of the units were completed with a pass, they get a pass diploma. If most of the units were completed with a distinction, then like I think they need 3, then they would get a distinction diploma. And anything in between will be a merit in general, but this is specifically defined by the points. Apart from the qualification specifications, we have also issued sample assignments for each of the units of our qualifications.
Bernadette, sorry for interruption,
yes.
But back to the previous slide regarding the marking and grades. Is this the same applied on level 7 extended diploma?
In the level 7 diploma, you will find this in the qualification specifications. So let me show you.
I'm asking you because, as you know, we are only dealing with the L7 extended diploma.
Yes.
We're not handling the level 3 or 4. So, but if the system is the same, it's okay. I understand the concept, and then we can apply it on any level.
Yeah. So in level 7, I will show you. Here are the. Let me enlarge. So here again, you have equal weight. We have some music background noise. Could you please mute yourself if you are not talking? Okay, or maybe I can. I don't know where we have the music coming from. Okay, whatever. Okay, I don't just. Okay. Yes, so in the level, okay, now it's better. In the level 7, so the units are equally weighted here as well, 15 credits for each of the units in that qualification. And there are optional units, etc. And then here is the grading. Let me quickly get there. Yes, grading system. So here the learners would get 45 points for pass, 60 points for merit, 75 points for distinction, and then these are the scales in the diploma, and in the extended diploma it's different.
So regarding the 45 and 60 and 75, what are these points? I mean, out of count of how much? Because if the total of 45, 60, and 75, the total 180.
Yeah, no. So for each unit, if the learner has completed all the units with a pass grade, or the 8 units, then they would get 45 points for each of the units. So you multiply it by 8, that's 360. So then in the extended diploma, so that's a pass. If they have completed all the units, for example, or so let's say half of the units with a pass grade, that's 200, 180.
I see. So we are here talking about the total units.
Yes.
Grading for the graduation. I see. Right.
Okay, so that's how.
But that will take us back to the same point we were initiated in the beginning. Okay, regarding the sampling and the judgment of the sampling, which will reflect on the whole units. This will be our role in general as a center, and this is the system we follow, right?
Yes.
But for the verification, external verification, and again, to the same point, you mentioned that you will judge the center, not the learners, which is not fair to me. Again, if the guy and you made the external verification and you proved that you found that this learner is okay and he's been assessed perfectly, his answer okay, so both sides, either internal or center work or your work, agreed that this guy is distinction or merit or pass for the sample, then automatically should be graduated for all units according to our internal system of graduation, which is following yours as well, right? This is what I understand, the system overall, okay? But if you judge because you're not convinced of some learners and then you generalize on all the learners, this is not fair, definitely.
Yeah, as I said, the focus is on the center because you have recruited and you have delivered the training to the learner. And in the assessment, I mean, yes, it's possible that if some learners have really perfectly performed or achieved all the learning outcomes and highly, there are highly secure there's highly secure achievement for each of the learning outcomes. And the decision could be that for 2 learners or 3 learners, there would be a pass for all the units, and then the rest would be failed. But this normally means really normally this means this is decided when it's a kind of borderline or marginal pass for those learners who achieved the unit.
Yes, those who achieved, they didn't achieve by themselves, achieved due to the system they follow for the learning or the educational system or the instructors or the assessment or the internal verification, which all the system came up with their results. But as I said, due to the differences between the different individuals, definitely you will find perfect guys, intermediate guys, and failures by the end. This is acceptable, I understand. But to judge the whole center or the whole people according to the failures only, or not convinced with the past people, this I can see this is first of all is not fair. Second, it will create some kind of mistrust between the learners and the center by the end of the day, because you know it's very irritating situation, to be honest. Especially it takes a very long time for verification, external verification and responding. I mean, you know, if it is immediate action after each unit to be done by the center and then by the external, and then we come back to the learner, but after he completed everything and spent 1 year or 1 year and something, and then by the end of the day we come up with the result that you are not successful and you have to repeat again the assignments. This is very irritating to the learners. And
I know, and this is why it's very important that assessors understand the criteria-based assessment. This is why we emphasize this in practically every single report that we issue, that criterion-based focus criterion-based assessment is essential, because if criteria are understood and they are expected, they are required from learners that these are achieved, then there is no, well, I mean, there can still be issued, but then there are no significant issues.
Yes, and so the guys, the learners, if they followed what they have done today, without alerting them that there is something wrong, they will keep going on what they are doing till the end of the units. But if we alert them from the beginning, after the first unit, that, hey guys, there's something wrong here, we have to change the way we are answering, that we have to change the way we look at the assignment, then they might correct their way from both sides. I mean, both instructors and learners. But to wait along the road till the end line, and then we come up and say, hey guys, sorry, there's something wrong, you're not successful.
Yeah, this
While
is why
there are some others, this creates some kind of unease of understanding and mistrust.
This is why we have training. This is why we have training videos as well published for ages on our website. So these have to be. I mean, assessors have to be trained. That's crucial, so that they alert the learners in one place. Centers also have the possibility one or two for certification, but that will be considered. That will be an extra charge when this results for the same learner. So in the registration package of a learner, there is one submission included, but for further submissions for the same learner on the same qualification, an extra charge will apply. But if you want to be on the safe side, you can always submit per unit your learners, or I'm also free of charge. I'm also happy to review samples before you move on or before you sample them. So you can just send me a piece of learner work and together with the assessment sheet, because I have to look at the assessment as well. And I'm happy to give you feedback, and that should also help. But it is essential that this system is understood by teachers and assessors before they start.
Definitely. That's why I discussed this issue with you today, because we have, maybe it's sorry for the guys, because it might be a very specific case with us, but they might face in the future the other guys, so they get benefit of what we are saying today. Yeah, that's why we have to find some kind of a solution of what we are in today for both sides, for those who succeeded in the samples and for those who failed in the samples. Yeah. And we let us together afterwards, after the meeting, to set some kind of a roadmap how to go for the solution for this case, because we don't want to for our repetition to be affected negatively, because word of mouth is one of the very strong tools in the business in the Middle East region.
Yes,
more than anything else.
I hope this training will be the road to pass. Sorry to move on, but I'm a bit conscious of our time, and we we are definitely overrunning.
Yes.
So in addition to the qualification specifications, you also have assignments. We have issued a sample assignment for most of the units of all the units of most of our qualifications, but these can also be developed by centers later on, but they have to be approved by ATAG before they can be used. So we have these assignments. They practically provide a context to the assessment criteria and learning outcomes. So learners have more, how to say, digestible tasks to complete. So after the introductory section, within the sample assignment, here is task 1. It will always highlight the assessment criteria that should be completed. So the focus of the learner is on the standards. Normally one task covers one learning outcome, but sometimes there are mixtures because that's how the qualification developer thought it's best to approach. But normally one learning outcome, one task. So here we have the context of a workshop for people who are considering setting up their own business. They prepare a presentation about the purposes of business organizations with supporting notes. So here, the format expected from the learner is a presentation. Now, many learners or many centers will submit reports only. They forget or they not happy with the presentation, I don't know. But when the task is about presentations, it should be a presentation. We would never penalize a learner for not completing a presentation and providing evidence in a report format only, but we strongly encourage centers to give the opportunity to learners to design and deliver presentations, and also to train them how to deliver a proper, how to prepare and deliver a proper presentation. Because, for example, the sample that I sent you, that we will cover in activity 4. So this is a lovely leaflet, I would rather say, but this is not a presentation, and this is what we received for one part of the sample learner work. Now, if your task is to talk about the importance of mission, vision, and business strategy to, for example, those who are just about to set up their own business, startup companies, they will not watch your presentation for a long time. We depend for context for the business audience. Nobody will be able to read this presentation when they are doing it. So, as I said, for the purposes of achieving the qualification, they will still pass because the information and evidence that we need, the evidence is there because the importance has been stated here, but it's just not a presentation, really. So that's why it's important to follow. Then also sorry, I seem to have lost my mouse. Okay, I'm back. Yes, good. So then you also have the task for the merit grade for in the learning outcome 1, where you have to add further slides to the presentation to analyze the extent to which a specific organization meets stated purposes. This is the context. Even if the center designs their own presentation, it will have to follow the same standards, the same criteria, and same learning outcomes. Then a very, very, very important, but not very often visited part of the sample assignment is the end, where it says guidelines for assessors, and this clarifies what evidence we need for achievement of the learning outcomes. This is similar to the indicative content in the qualification specification. So, for example, for learning outcome 1 here, it says that a range of examples have to be added to the description of the different types of organizations. And also, for example, for the merit task, it says that the learner has to identify a specific organization because very often learners forget this and they just talk about companies in general, or they talk about sectors instead of specific companies. It's important not only for assessors. This should reach learners as well. It's important to check what exactly is needed in the evidence. Any questions about assignments and the structure of qualifications?
No, it's clear.
All right. So I just wanted to put this out that
yes,
sincerely, you are not alone in all that you have discussed. We experience the same thing as to how learners achieve a certain qualification and certain units. So your questions have not been pulling us back. I just wanted to let you know that they're in order. Thank you.
They are useful. Thank you for the feedback. Yes, we do. We do discuss whatever you want to bring on the floor. Okay, so then more about criterion-based assessment, and also let me just check that all the areas are covered. Yes, I showed you the portal. Okay, we're moving on to criterion-based assessment. We have already covered the portal. Okay, so let me then share my screen again. This is the kind of theoretical part, and then we move. So what criterion-based assessment means? It describes what students must know, understand, and can do. Assessments are used to provide learner feedback and to inform future teaching.
By the way, no screen have shown up.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Oops.
Yeah.
Thank you. So criterion-based referencing describes what students must know, understand, and can do. So it's not, as I said, the learning journey they have done. It's the end. It's whether they have the knowledge and they understand and they can do what is required in the standards. Assessments are used to provide learner feedback and to inform future teaching and learning needs. So what this means, it's not only the assessment that has to be focusing on these criteria, but the entire delivery should also make sure that the milestones are clear to learners. And when they receive feedback, even for the first draft of the piece of learner work, the feedback is along the criteria. So if they have written a nice introduction about business environment, we have to say that this is clear and this is a proper introduction. But since he has not mentioned a single type of organization, learning outcome 1 has still not been achieved. So make sure you describe each type of public and private, or several types of public and private organizations, make as the purposes of these types. So it's important that these standards are in the head of the learners from day one, because this is how they will have to organize their work. And it's beautiful if they have studied half a year about business environment and they have a lot of understanding how it generally affects business. But chances are that they will get exhausted before they can really focus on the standards and to organize their assignment along these standards. So as a teacher, my recommendation is that from day one, it's clear to them that they are working towards a criterion-based qualification. Descriptors of levels of performance define achievement, the expected standards, types, and range of performance at a given level. These descriptors are given in the form of assessment criteria and learning outcomes in the qualification specification for each unit and are specific for each level. As we discussed, the command verbs in the assessment criteria, they increase in complexity with the level, and also the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes normally start with understand, know how to, or be able to. These are again the level of significance. So in level 3, 4, you would have mainly understand, and in level 6, 7, you would mainly have know how to or be able to. The difference Understand is about making, having the ability to make sense of the business context, understanding how business is in general, operating, how the different elements of business strategy should be approached, etc. Know how to is when they are able to explain the steps that are needed to achieve a certain or to complete a certain activity, how to complete a marketing strategy, for example. They have to be able to clearly explain and exemplify the steps needed to do something. For example, to complete a business environment analysis, they have to be able to talk about and assess, so with some critical aspect, show the different tools, how we look at the business environment, what elements we check in, etc. Be able to the highest level is they have to produce something. When it's not enough to simply talk about how a marketing strategy should be done, it's not enough to talk about how Nike and all these very popular companies have done marketing. It's important to produce one own marketing strategy, and that's a big task, and it's obviously for a reason it will only come in levels at level 6 or level 7, and this is again for failure, because be able to normally means that they have to choose a company and build a marketing strategy, do a business environment analysis, whatever case study, taking whatever case study, build on the case study and do an own review, an own project, an own strategy for it. And here what learners often do is that they select a high profile company and then they start, well, they try to criticize that company by choosing areas that could be developed. And learners, even at level 6 and 7, hardly ever have the resources, the information, the research data, sometimes even still the knowledge to really build a strategy for such a high-profile company. So it's important that they would rather select a low-profile company, a local company, or at least a medium-sized company, where there are really areas for improvement which can clearly be identified and then built on. It's just, again, a piece of advice. No problem if a learner still chooses Apple and Tesla and all these in the learner work, but they should rather be advised to choose a digestible company. Learning outcomes. So as we said, the standards of ATG qualifications relate to domains of learning that are broken down into units. With each unit or subject or module, we sometimes call them, comprising a set of learning outcomes, and with each outcome characterized in terms of a set of assessment criteria. Each unit specification provides a map of a learning journey where each LO corresponds to a significant landmark along the way. The goal of the learning journey is to traverse the entire map and to achieve each learning outcome in the specification. The assessment criteria supports the achievement of the learning outcomes. And here is the difference that I mentioned outlined. For occupational competence-based qualifications, for example, the bespoke qualifications, teacher training, risk management, etc., each assessment criteria have to be met, while for knowledge and understanding-based qualifications, for example, the business and health and social care law, judgments on the quality of learner work will be based on the evidence presented to show achievement of the learning outcomes, where the standards are still supporting, but as I said, they are not key elements in achievement. When the learner submits the work to the assessor, it should be reviewed and judged against achievement of the LOs, even in first drafts, using formative as well as summative feedback and providing developmental feedback as appropriate. And similarly, when the learner work is finished, is finalized, the final assessment is submitted to the assessor, and it is essential to provide evidence for achievement of each learning outcome at the standard set by the AC with completion of the sheet. Let me show you an example of a front sheet, assignment front sheet. Yes. So this is a not very good example because the learning outcome is missing. Let me show you the example. I sent you both because now we are a bit short of time. So here the center added some additional pages. Oh, sorry, no, this is the, yeah, this is the good example, sorry. Yes, that's what I was searching for. Okay, so here, let me enlarge this a bit. This is how the feedback should be formulated. You list all the learning outcomes and assessment criteria in the first two columns. Then you check every single learning outcome, looking at the assessment criteria as well, whether they have been achieved. And here we have detailed feedback. You have produced work which demonstrates achievement of the LO at the standards listed by the AC for assessment criteria 1.1, criteria met adequately. You have identified and described the common functions and divisions found in organizations. So this is practically giving evidence that yes, the learner has done what the criteria has requested them to do. Also, you have described different organizational structures in general with examples. You have presented the images for each, and this would have enhanced the description. So if there is place for improvement, then the assessor should also give some developmental feedback to the learner. You can either indicate for each AC whether it's a pass, whether it has been achieved or not, like in the first example. That's also correct, pass, 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 for all the pass criteria, and then stating that the merit and distinction criteria have not yet been achieved, and why. Or you can just state for the whole learning outcome, the final grade. That's up to you. It's just important that if the learner has attempted a higher grade, they should receive feedback for it. So even if they haven't achieved it, they should get feedback on what didn't go well. Now, often learners will submit the learner work and they only achieve a pass grade where they really would like to go for a higher grade. Whether you allow the learner to go for a higher grade in a resubmission or not, it's up to the center. But you have to be careful and you have to document it in your assessment policy. Some centers will say that once the learner has achieved pass, that's it. Thank you very much. No more attempts, because we need to move on with the assessment, and assessment is really hard work to always check whether the assessment criteria are met or anything is still missing. So to go through it again and again is a lot of work. So some centers will say that you can resubmit, you fail the unit 3 times, 4 times, forever. But if once you have achieved pass, that's it. Or you can say that the learner has the opportunity to resubmit once more, twice more, whatever, if they want to achieve a higher grade. But then again, you have to watch your schedules for submitting learner result, because this could delay the submission for other learners as well. So again, I just wanted to say that this is a center decision. Yes. And so this is how the assignment front sheet will look like. So it's important that you always give evidence. Simply rephrasing what was stated in the assessment criteria is not evidence. So saying that the learner explained why an organization needs operational control is not really evidence. You should rather say that you have been able to show the understanding of importance of operation control, and then stating that what was missing. That's already evidence. So we need to see that the assessor has really gone through the work that the learner has done, and it shouldn't just simply be a rephrase of either the learning outcome or the assessment criteria. That's where we are. Okay, we talked about the command verbs already, and we said, yes, they are important. Any questions so far on the assessment feedback?
Nice. Clear.
Hopefully others too. Of course, you can use your own mark sheets. What's very important to us is that you have the information in it that we need, all the learning outcomes, all the assessment criteria, also stating if, oh yes, that's important, also stating if there is any resubmission, or if there are any adjustments, special considerations that have been applied. So here at the very end, we ask if the learner has been granted special considerations. We should know. This is our regulatory requirement as well. And also if there was another language used in assessment, that is stated. And what is missing here is that the resubmission should state it. Because internally, as I said, you have unlimited opportunities for resubmission. That's your decision. But to ATAG, we have a new policy for a couple of weeks or months, I think. So now there is only one retake allowed. And then if the learner fails again at the moderation, at the ATAG level, then they will have to complete the program of study, which means that even if that's only one unit that they haven't completed, they will have to wait the minimum length of learning time before they can submit that unit again. So important that the assessors use the appropriate criteria. As I said, command, very important. So I would bring examples from the higher level of command because are the complicated ones. So evaluation means that you look at the concepts. For example, you have to evaluate a tool for marketing strategies. So for example, the Porter's generic strategies, you have to evaluate different tools for developing marketing strategies. Let's say one of this will be the Porter 5 generic strategies. So it doesn't mean that you have to, it means a lot more than simply describing it. It means a lot more than applying it. Evaluation means that you have to examine the strengths and weaknesses of that tool, not a company that you selected, of the tool of the Porter's 5 generic strategies. You have to establish arguments for and against using that tool, similarities, differences, and judge the evidence from the different perspectives. So for example, you could say that it is perfectly applicable in large companies or in a diverse marketing environment, for example, in shops for cities where they have a diverse customer base, but in small local shops with clearly identifiable and homogeneous business base, it's not really applicable because it's difficult to develop different strategies for such a homogeneous target customer base, or it's very well applicable in multinational environment or Western culture, but it's not so much in Arabic culture for whatever reasons. That's part of the learner's research to say. So evaluation is looking at the concept that is in the assessment criteria from different perspectives. Analysis is when you, as I said, break down the subject or complex situations into the separate parts and examine each part in detail. Analysis often goes for theories, for example, analyze different leadership theories. So then again, it's way more than describing it and talking about the author, for example, of the theory. It's talking about what elements that management theory considers important. Is it the character of the leader? Is it the characteristics of the company? So they bring it down to smaller parts, and normally analysis means analysis is for different, for more elements. So analyze different leadership theories. So then it's very practical to use the same elements for the different theories, and then it's already a nice, even comparative analysis. Learners don't always need to compare these. It's just a practical advice that it's more digestible if they try to use the same elements for the analysis. But we also have command verbs which says compare and contrast different theories or differentiate. Differentiation is always again a sensitive problematic command word, because for differentiation, learners often simply describe the different concepts, differentiate between sales and marketing, and then they define sales and marketing. Differentiation means that they have to show the differences. Again, comparison and contrasting is more than simply describing. You have a list of the command verbs in the learner handbook that's on the ATHE Center portal, so learners should again receive it during the induction, so they can always go back and check in the glossary what command verb means exactly what. Oops, sorry. And the extension activities we have already covered, and that they have to all be met. It's just repeated here, and we have the points system here for the qualification. So just watching our time, I'm not going to go through these again, because as I understood, that was clear. Any questions at this point?
It's clear. For
No
me, it's
questions.
All clear. Okay. So now we will move on to the practical part, activity 4 then, where I hope you had the opportunity to go through the sample work that I sent you, because then we would now talk about those. I will bring it up on my computer as well, but it would be good if you could bring it up on your screen as well, so that we can talk about them, and it's not me scrolling here and there. Just a second, just enlarge this. So sample 1, and what we will do, we will go through at least the first 2 learning outcomes and see whether the learner has achieved them or not.
Can you share it, please?
Yes, but if, as I said, so the screen is limited, so if you could also bring it up on your computer, that would be helpful. But so here is the first sample.
Because unfortunately, I cannot. I don't have access to it now, so that's why it would be great to share it. Sorry for that.
Okay, so I give you a few minutes, especially for those who can bring it up on their screen and go through it. And my question will be, have the assessment criteria of learning outcome 1 been met? The assessment criteria is there in the subtitle for ease of use. So just go through them, let's say 2 minutes. I stay in silence, and then we talk about the achievement. So if you are ready. First assessment criteria: identify common functions and divisions found in organizations. What do you think? Has this been done by the learner?
I cannot put my opinion because I don't see any screen.
You still don't see? Oh, sorry. So here
That's
it is.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Apologies. I thought I shared it again.
Yeah.
Okay. Others then in the meantime?
It's clear now.
Newcomers now. Wow. So anybody? Maybe just because of network connection. Yeah, here we go. So has the learner identified the common functions and divisions?
Yes.
I believe yes.
Yes. Exactly. More describe these functions, so it's very well and clearly done. Perfect. Then moving on to the next one. Using examples, describe different structures within organizations. I have to zoom a bit. Anyway, the rest of the structures are also there. Those who have opened it can see it.
I believe yes.
Others?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, too. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the description is certainly there. Different structures have been described, but there are no examples because the learner says last sentence, small size business organizations use this functional organization structure. I mean, that's not an example and not necessarily true, actually, because no, not necessarily a functional organization structure for a small size company. So it's no, the example is not there. Let's just say we are talking about assessment criteria only now, so we don't say.
Why not? Why not? If you mention the small size business organization, use functional organization structure. Why not? Why you didn't give consider that as an example? Should he nominate something or
yes.
what?
Yes, and this is in the ATAG task, in the sample assignments, in the guidelines for assessors, that specific examples, specific companies should be named as examples.
Yeah, correct.
I believe a small size company is an example because it could be reverted to any company, to any name.
He wanted the name.
No.
But we know what is the small size company. Okay, we know what is a medium size, we know what is a big size. So small size itself, it's known as a small size company. As an example.
It's not an example.
It shouldn't. Why? It shouldn't be a name.
It should be because the assignment, the ATAG sample assignment specifies that it should be a specific company. One, and as I said, it's not necessarily true. Not all small size companies will have functional organization structure. So it's not even correct, the sentence itself. And this is a category, and the category here It's not an example. It could be in some other cases, but this is specified in the other unit. And the same goes for the other examples. Sorry, someone else was also saying something. Ayodolapo, or sorry, who was?
Yeah, I was saying that.
Someone else was
sharing. Saying that using a small business or tag is being generalistic. Yeah, to mention a specific company is being specific, and that's what I got there. That's essential, and that's what is required.
That's what's missing. Yeah, I'm not saying that the learner failed just because of this. I'm saying that this is missing, and the assessment criteria itself was not met. Then, as we scroll down, the same goes for the divisional structure. For the divisional structure, there is no example at all. For the matrix structure, it says that this is so much effective, not very English, but anyway, it's so much effective for a large type of business organizations. Again, it depends. Police is a large organization. The churches are large organizations, and they never have these organizations will always have a hierarchical structure, for example. So it might probably is mainly the validity of the statements, but also it doesn't give a specific example. But the structures themselves were described, so that was there. Still within the same learning outcome, the next assessment criteria is describe the key differences between public, private, voluntary sector, and public service organizations. Let me de-zoom a bit so that you can see how this was attempted. Yes. Do you think this has been achieved?
I believe from the first look at this answer, I disagree with the way he answered. Because if you would like to make a differentiation, we should make a table, we should make parameters of comparison of differentiations, and then we clarify in front of each criteria or item the differences. But just to describe it as a general article, this is not the very proper way of answering this question, I believe.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, that's the main problem here, that it's only description, no differences were even mentioned. So yes, there are implied differences, but the task here is that the learner specifically states what the key differences are between these sectors. Yes, and then some more examples from this piece of learner work. In learning outcome 2, the first task is to explain a range of key financial concepts and the detailed description of the key stakeholders. What do you think?
Well, I'll say yes, because it identifies the internal and external stakeholders.
Sorry, because the external and internal and external stakeholders. Sorry, I didn't get what you were saying. The internal and external stakeholders.
Yes.
I say yes. I can see that it shows the internal and external stakeholders. Yeah. So, and I think it describes the stakeholders who wish to understand the organization financial situation.
I don't really see it here, actually. So the key financial concepts are definitely explained. But here in this sample, actually, first of all, the concept of stakeholders is misunderstood here, because the learner changes shareholders, which is just 2 letters, but it's a wholly different concept. Yes. Shareholders are only one stakeholders. And the description is very generic. So the description of stakeholders should be again more specific. Who are actually the stakeholders?
The stakeholders, yes.
The groups. So that part is not very well met here. So the explanation is not full, it's not complete.
And in that case, as the shareholder is one of the stakeholders, yes. How do you evaluate such kind of answer? I mean, you consider that failure or what, or missing parts of yes. the answer, or what? How you assess
yes. that? So this is where again I go back to the sample assignment and the guidelines for assessors at the end, where it states that a range of internal and external stakeholders should be described. So then I would, as an assessor, and we are now talking about assessment and not the external quality assurance. So as an assessor, I would definitely refer this back to the learner, saying that correct the concept of shareholders, because they are only one stakeholders, and add change the description to be applicable.
Okay, but if you don't refer it back, because if you go into the referring back the assessment, the answers assignment, going back and forth coming and so on, this will be a dilemma, and there will be a lot of wasting time. So how you grade what you have seen now on your in front of you?
You should. I mean, now we are at the level of assessment. So
yes.
as an assessor, you should identify that this is an issue, and you should refer this back to the learner. Otherwise,
I mean, I will feed it back on yeah. my report, but I will not give him the chance to re-answer. I mean, how do you evaluate this answer? How you consider it failure or pass or what?
For the assessment criteria, failure, not about we say not yet achieved, because it definitely hasn't been achieved yet as an assessment criteria. Now, then we can look at the learning outcome, because this is a business qualification and the focus is on the learning outcome.
Yes.
And here the learning outcome, I think it includes, I don't have it in front of me now, but I think it's in the assignment front sheet. Let me just check. So the learning outcome includes the stakeholders, I think. Learning outcome. Oh no, it says no key financial concepts used in organizations. So in this case, the fact that the stakeholders were not understood, from this, the learning outcome can still be achieved.
So by the end, what you will write, pass or failure or F?
Pass. Yeah,
pass.
For the learning outcome, pass, yes. But as I said again, this is where we would say that the assessment is still not, well, okay, depends on the feedback, yes, as you said. So if the feedback from the assessor is there on the front sheet that stakeholders were wholly misunderstood, then that shows at least that assessment is properly done. So at least the assessor has the understanding of stakeholders.
Of course, this is not a, yes, of course, the feedback will be there. But my question was to be clear about what grade you would put, what evaluation as assessor.
Sorry,
is it pass or failure or what? Yes.
Yeah, in this case, it's a pass. Yeah, I was hesitating, sorry, because in the previous version of this qualification, the understanding of stakeholder expectations of the learning outcome. So it says no key financial concepts and stakeholder expectations. In that case, this is a fail. But in this case, it's a pass because it's not in the learning outcome.
Right. Because as you know, not every learner would be able to put a complete,
yes,
a full complete answer according to what we expect or the criteria or whatever. So I would like to know how you think about this issue. So
you're perfectly
on the
right.
same wavelength in the assessing.
Yes, yeah, and actually the just to bring a more frequent example is the level of English. So that's such a diversity that we see.
This is another issue.
Yes. So again, here we have to draw a line between good English and really, really poor English. So my principle is that the comprehension, the understanding has to be clear. So when I'm reading, and I'm a second speaker of English, English is my second language, not my first at all. So if I don't understand what the learner is trying to communicate at a business level, so not in like colloquial conversation level, but at a good or at a reasonable business level, I don't understand, I don't really get the message from the learner, then it's definitely a fail for poor English, not even looking at learning outcomes. But if even at a basic level, the learner is able to convey a business presentation, a business message in the business analysis in the report, then it's admissible, so then we can assess the learner.
Yes, but here is, let me disagree with you on 1 or 2 points. Number one, for you, the English is second language, yes, but you have lived in UK and you've been practiced and use the language. The other way around in our countries, in the Arabic countries, okay, education level, even in the schools and educating the English, it's not at that level that enable everybody. Besides, there's no practice as well, even if it is the top level and no practice. You know, the practice is everything for the languages. If you leave the language for a while, you will forget the fluency. But so this is 1 point. Number 2, we as a culture, as Arabic culture, and we instructors and learners are with each other along the way with the teaching process. So there is a communication, there is understanding, both understanding. So you can evaluate the learners while you are teaching through the classes and the conversations and discussion and so on. So you come to some kind of a conclusion of understanding of your learners, who's good, who's bad, who's intermediate, and so on. So by the end, when you read the answers of these people, and of course you know the names and the people who are answering, so to some extent you understand what do they really want to say, even if they miss the proper expression in a proper language. But by the end of the day, we can understand what does he mean, and if he's in the right track of the answer or not, can understand the concept or not. This is again will be a difficult point to judge between us as internal evaluation and structural assessment as well external, okay, because you know nothing about the learner, you know nothing about his culture, you know nothing about his language, you just judge what is in front of you as text, right? So this kind of conflict here might lead to some under-evaluation or misleading in the judgment, the final judgment of the learner. So I believe you should give some more, let me say, trust and belief in the centers and the staff you are dealing with, because they know more the culture, they know more the learners, and they will be more capable to evaluate, especially we are all dealing with good people, straightforward people, good instructors, educated, well knowledgeable and experienced as well. So we put aside any kind of or abuse or crook ways of teaching and so on. So what do you think of that?
I hear you. Yes, I hear you, and I agree that definitely. And we do try to build our qualifications. So already at that level, we try to account for cultural diversity. However, when I talk about poor English, normally it's at the level of understanding key concepts. So, for example, using terms like business environment or not like liquidity ratio, for example, they would use flexibility meter or something. So sometimes, and this is an important indicator of the language skills, because that shows that the key concept is not there in the learner's language skills, and that's an issue. So that's definitely, and this is in the qualification requirement, so it's not even at the learning outcome, or my understanding, because my understanding is or my principle comes from the requirements of the qualification, that the subject areas, key terms have to be understood properly by the learner. So if the sentence structure sometimes or frequently fails, but the concepts are clearly used and they can clearly be conveyed, and especially at higher levels, level 6 and 7. And I mean, with the level 6 and 7 diploma learners, internationally can easily jump into large companies where English is used on a daily basis for business communication purposes, even at junior level, junior management positions. So it is expected that they speak proper English, and obviously the UK qualification has to reflect that the learner can use the English phrases at an international level. Not, I know I've been to Africa quite a lot of times, so I know that the use of language can be the use of English can be very different in cultures where English is used as a second language or as a double, in duality with another local language. So I understand then, and I hear your concern, but normally that's the mindset. And the reason why, or the phenomenon that brings up this issue is normally plagiarism. So with all good intention, the learners often try to use secondary sources, pretty much either copy online sources to maintain a good level of English in their work, or they take online sources and they rephrase it to often something incomprehensible, because they want to avoid, again, with all good intention, they want to avoid plagiarism, but they don't have the skills to really put it into their own sentences to integrate the learned or used sources into their own assignment. So then they would rephrase it into, and it's still plagiarism if they rephrase something and they don't show the source. And it's even worse if they are rephrasing it to a very, very low level of English, normally twisting the key terms. That will obviously lead to the wrong direction. If not failure, but it's definitely not. So I know that language is an issue, but for these qualifications, normally from the IELTS scale, a level of 4, 5 is a minimum. Normally it's 5 point, an average 5.5. That's what the centers would expect, and I think it's a good practice. So rather give them a foundation half a year or academic year to improve their English. If they haven't met it yet, then have a constant cycle of failure. Watching our time, let me give you a good example of, or a better example of a piece of learner work. So that's the same unit, so the same tasks, identifying common functions and divisions. So this has been again properly done here by the learner. Then also using examples, different structures were described. So here the hierarchical structure is described, illustrated, and the example of NHS, the National Health Service of the UK, is given. So that's what we would mean by an example. Same for the functional structure. Same for the flat structure where Google is given as an example, etc. And then as we scroll down, the differences between public, private, voluntary, and public sector is outlined here using the same parameters, forms, purpose. So as you very well said, differences should normally be presented in a table or chart or whatever. Yes, and then talking about the stakeholders, so key accounting concepts are described, explained, and then the stakeholders are separately covered, internal and external stakeholders. So this is how it should be.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the unit as well. So the second example is a more advanced version. Right. Okay, so this was about the samples, and in the presentation that I sent you, I summarized all these, the findings of the learner work. So the key is meeting the learning outcomes, using the command verbs, showing evidence, and the work must be valid, authentic, current, sufficient, reliable, and safe. By validity, as I said, it means that that the learner has to state valid judgments when, for example, linking examples to types of structures. And this is even more true with higher level qualifications. So when they are analyzing a company, for example, and they are giving recommendations, to me that's the highest level of the ATAG qualifications or the ATAG tasks that we set, when they have to recommend something to a company, because it really has to be valid. And I have read examples, for example, when learners were advising a company to start using internal emails in 2022. So it's not a valid recommendation. Or to start building for Starbucks or Amazon, or I don't know, start building a staff development program. When it's online, it's easily available to the learners can see that there are development programs at any of the high profile companies. So this could go for a small company, but when they are giving advice to a company, it has to be based on the data of that company, and they have to research that company. So that's why I say no for high profile companies. So validity is that. Authenticity is be their own work. Now plagiarism is a strong area, so to say, and plagiarism would normally be tolerated at a certain level. I hate numbers. I wouldn't really like to say numbers, but I will in a second, because the principle is that for every single learning outcome, the learner has to present own evidence, own input for achievement of that learning outcome. So even if the similarity index is low, but for example, one learning outcome, the learner has only or mainly produced third-party text, which were either identified by the plagiarism report or found by the EQA or IQA later, that's a fail, because the learner has only copied the text but did not present any own findings. Nevertheless, we have a rule for authenticity, and this document I have sent you, and here are the rates where scores, so the plagiarism report is what you will send to us together with the learner work when you submit the results of the learner. So you have use the plagiarism report, a plagiarism software. Sometimes centers will ask learners to use a software and always submit their learner work together with the plagiarism report. Sometimes the centers run these reports themselves with their own use of software. What is important from our perspective is that the assessors would always check these reports, and they would always ensure that they are at a good level. So the learner has not plagiarized in the work, or not excessively at least, and we need a copy of the report full. So not only the statistical first page or second or last, it depends on which software you use, but the full report. So if it's under 10%, this work typically includes some quotes and some common phrases, so that's not a problem. Scores between 10 and 20%, this would be more thoroughly checked. What is exactly that copy? Very often learners would include the description of the task in the assignment. So obviously that would not be an issue. Or the reference list, that's also normally highlighted in the plagiarism reports, but that's again not an issue. And then the larger the similarity index, the larger the issue is. But I have seen successful learner work with 45% as well. I think it was from finance, and the learner was able to write in so concise, really well established arguments about the financial statements, that the own input was indeed short, but the copy of the financial statements, since it was in Word, it was counted as or considered as similar to online sources. But still the learner's own input was perfectly there for each learning outcome. So that's also possible. So numbers are just numbers, important to look at them, but more important to look at what the learner has actually done.
That means this 10%, 20 to 20, 20 to 40 to 40%. So in which cases you consider the learner pass in which cases you consider as failure?
Well, we would always use the scores as well, but as I said, what we do check, I mean, the most important is looking at the learning outcomes and whether the learner has used.
Suppose everything is perfect, is doing properly according to learning outcome, according to the criteria, everything is going perfect. I'm talking about the plagiarism itself. So, which is which? When you consider him failure, despite his answers are perfect, and when you think it could be passed.
Based on the numbers, only based on the numbers, I would never fail or I would never pass the learner, or I would never say a piece of learner work is good. If it's about 40%, it's suspicious, and chances are high that the learner has plagiarized excessively and the learner work would be failed.
Okay, suppose it's between 10 and 20.
I scroll every single time. I scroll down all through the way in the plagiarism report, and I see what is similar or what is highlighted as plagiarized the text. If it's the reference list, which can sometimes be 5 pages long, and that can easily be 15% on its own, then I don't care because it's a reference list. If it's a copied reference list in its entirety, so even the sequence and the items are together taken from a source, that I would flag, but in itself, it's obviously not a reason for failure. If the 20% comes from 2 pages copy from an online source for one of the learning outcomes, and not so much more text is added by the learner, it's a fail for the learning outcome. But if the between 10 and 20%, let's say we have 15, and it's spread across the learner work, the report already shows that it's 1% from one side, 1% from another side, so it's not clustered, then it's again, probably it's not an issue because the learner has spread it across the learner work and given additional thoughts to each of those.
I see.
Yeah. But obviously we also do the...
But again, you know, the different softwares could judge the issues differently. So yes. I would recommend again that if we unify the software as a system for the revision of the plagiarism between us as a center and you as ATHE would be great. So at least we're following the same roadmap.
Yes, but it's not the numbers, as I said. So I have seen, for example, a full piece of learner work available online and submitted by a learner to us. And there was a plagiarism report attached to it with 0% or 5%, I can't remember. But the EQA myself does, for example, we do our own checks as well, so we use softwares as well. Sometimes a simple Google search helps, unfortunately. So it's not about the numbers. This can guide us, and these actually flag the issues both for the assessors and the EQAs as well. But what is important is that the learner is able to use the sources in an academic manner. So building on time. Normally the on full paragraph. That's where that's why to me the red line.
The issues comes up. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
From my learning, my teachers at the university used to say that if you are copying too much in one cluster, it means that you haven't understood what you are copying, and that's the problem. And here
is that considered despite of citation? Suppose the answer is supported by some citation.
Yes. So again, that's a very good point. Yes. So if the learners cite something, it should be used again. So the citation is there, and then the learner has to add their own, for example, an example, or so the reason why it has been cited in full, because normally there's no need for long citation. So 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, that's way too much. 1-2 sentences is fine, and that gives the definition or the interpretation of something from a recognized author. That's fine. That should be there, but nothing more than 2 paragraphs. Even 2 paragraphs is normally too much. But yes, citation obviously should be done in also an academic manner, but it should always be either preceded or followed by the learner's own input, so that we see what's the reason for such a large copy. Just putting it in from someone else is not a good practice.
I see. Thank you.
Right. Any questions about assessment in general? Because then we would move on to the last section of IQA very quickly, because I don't want to keep you much longer.
No, that's okay.
Then we would go on to the internal quality assurance, features of internal quality assurance. So as I said, you have the assessment in place, which means you have assessors in your center who are normally the teachers, but it's up to you. The teachers who deliver the units, they would be assessing them in the first round. And
Yes.
then once assessment is completed, then you would have an internal quality assurer or more. You can have one lead internal quality assurance, some other, in larger centers, you would have some other internal quality assurers as well. But in a smaller, medium-sized center, this would be one person, an internal quality assurer, who will essentially be different from the assessors. And this internal quality assurer will sample from the assessed learner work, and they will not necessarily check every single piece of learner work. Initially, maybe yes, or for new assessors, maybe sample more, but this would normally be about sampling each learner and each unit. So, for example, if you have, I can show you the sample IQA plan, it's on the portal. If you have 5 learners, sample internal verification sheet, no. Sample internal verification policy, no. I want the sampling plan. Then it will be under the documents and resources. Sorry, I want to bring it up from here so that you see where you can find it if you need it. Sample documents. Yes, under resources, we have the sample documents. I knew it's here. So here we have the sample assignment front sheet internal. Oh, it's not here. Okay, then I will go back to the qualification. Really should have been here. Sample internal verification sheet. No. Is a standard guidance. Sample internal verification policy. Okay, then let me quickly open it from my computer, because it should be here. Internal sampling plan. Okay, sorry. I will check and make sure that it's there. So this is the sampling, an example of a sampling plan. So let's say you have 5 learners. Just look at the chart now. You have 5 learners and 3 assessors, and then we would recommend that each and you have 8 units. So this is from level 7. The learners have completed 8 units. Everyone has already completed all the 8 units. So what we recommend is that the internal quality assurer will take from learner 1, let's say the first unit, which is strategic planning, I guess, and then 2 units from learner 3, 2 units from learner 2, etc. So ensure that all subject area is covered, and if anything is insecure or you don't see the safety of the assessment, then further samples should be taken from that learner or from that unit. Here, there are more samples taken from one assessor, the yellow one, assessor 2, because that person is considered new in the position, so there an extended sampling is recommended. And the internal quality assurer would look at the learner work and would look at the assessment done. So the IQA, the internal quality assurer, is not so much focusing on the learner work and guiding the learner, rather on the assessor and looking at how the assessment has been done. And normally the IQA would not directly communicate with the learner, but rather through the assessor, ensuring that the assessment is improved if there are issues. For example, the command words are not very well completed or whatever other issues can come up. And then the sample internal verification sheet. So what the IQA would then complete is this ATAG internal verification form or any other sheet that you develop internally. But what we recommend watching, so to say, or monitoring in the IQA activity is that the feedback to the learner is linked to the learning outcomes. So is the assessor using the standards? And second, has the work been assessed to the standards? So is the final judgment on the assessment based on the learning outcomes or assessment criteria as well? And third, whether the feedback given to the learner is evidence-based. So is the feedback to the learner detailed so that they understand what has been achieved and the areas for improvement? So these are the three areas that the internal verifier should look at. This form should be completed for each of the sampled units, and the IQA should give specific feedback and evidence to how this has been done. Let me show you a completed IV sheet, which I have also sent you. So here there is detailed feedback, bringing example from learning outcome 1 and 1.2. I want to read this now to respect your time, but you can read this because I sent it to you. So it's very important to put evidence there as well. And this should be a unique feedback for each of the sample units. This is one important form of internal quality assurance, but there can be many other forms. Any ideas? I know we are short on time, but if you can give me any more examples of how you do internal quality assurance. What else do you do to ensure quality?
I believe focusing on the core of the content or the purpose of the internal quality assurance is very important, which you mentioned here, that it should be directed to the assessor rather than the learner, and confirming that the assessor is following the criteria of the assessment as well, and with the grading process.
But it's very important that this takes place within the center as well. The main point of standardization is that assessors regularly check that their understanding of the standards is the same. Well, very, very similar, so to say, but rather the same. And this can be done by simply talking about, for example, one assignment brief where there are more teachers delivering the same unit. They would hopefully sit down before the year starts and discuss how they see that unit should be completed by learners. But very strictly speaking, what we mean by standardization is when assessors sit down, they pre-read one piece of assignment, one piece of learner work, and then they make their judgments together. when they are at the meeting. So the activity is that they have read the same assignment, and then they which is normally a borderline assignment, because that's what is good for discussion, where some of the learning outcomes have been achieved, some have been marginally achieved. So this would be a good task for a standardization activity. Bring together all the assessors and the internal quality assurers, for sure, and go through each of the learning outcomes and assessment criteria as well, and discuss whether these have been achieved, what can be the issues for not achievement, should this be referred back, or should this simply be stated on the mark sheet. Plagiarism, is this excessive, or is this tolerable, or is this sufficient for a learning outcome, should there be more, etc. So to come to a reasonable agreement of what evidence should be required from the learners. Discussing also the level of feedback, as I said, that's also the role of the purpose of the IQA activity, and the role of the internal quality assurer to organize these. We would recommend to have at least one standardization meeting per year, but that depends on the volume of assessment you have. Yes, plagiarism I mentioned. There should be action plans if there are issues with assessors. So that's obviously part of the center's performance management, that if there are any issues with assessment, then it's again part of the internal quality assurer's role to set expectations to the assessors, and then monitor the completion of these action plans. The level of or the type of feedback you give, qualitative or quantitative data. So how do you? Some centers, for example, still use points and to rate the quality of the learner work when they are giving feedback. This doesn't concern us because we don't use. I mean, within the pass grade, we don't use any 1 to 100 rating, for example. But I know some centers still do, and that there is no problem with it. In some cultures, this is really important, or this is a practice, and they think it's good to follow. So that's also appreciated. It's just not used at the external quality assurance or certification level. Observation is a very, very important part of the internal quality assurance, class observations, sometimes even peer-to-peer observations. So learners watching each other's presentations, for example, each other's research, etc. But at the internal quality assurance level, the observation of classes, presentations, again, meetings between assessors, etc. And the rest I have providing guidance documents. Maybe we try to develop guidance documents for everything we can imagine, but maybe the internal quality assurer will have more direct and tailor-made advice that can help the assessor. So that's also part of the IQA role. Any questions about anything that we have covered or should have covered, and you would like to flag today?
Thank you very much, Pernille. It was clear and understandable as well. So thank you very much for your explanation. Still, our special case we have to discuss later or communicate in it, because we have to find some kind of solution for that. And we really need your support, understanding, and help as well. Thank you very much for everything. Today was really informative and useful, definitely, from all aspects. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'd like to ask if we have students that need to complete some part of the qualification. How do we proceed with that? How do we resubmit?
Sorry, so you have learners.
How do we resubmit for the EQA?
Right. So you have learners who have already completed some of the units, but not all.
Yes.
Right. And you would like to submit the results now or wait for them to complete them all?
No, yeah, to when they complete them, how do you resubmit for the EQA?
Right. So what you do, you go to the center portal, sharing my screen, hopefully, yes. So you go to the center portal and you submit the results. There is, first of all, there is a training video here. Maybe the best to go out under support and training resources. You will find the videos here. And here there should be a video about how to register learners. That also includes result submission. So that's a useful video to watch. A separate one now. Sorry, used to be one. So how to complete and submit results. So this is a good video, but I can also show you that you go to learners, and then the third one, download learner data and submit results. So there you will you will download the learner data, that's an Excel sheet, and then you will enter into that Excel sheet which units have been achieved by which learner with what grade. Let's say 5 learners for all 8 units, pass. Then you submit this. And then ATAG will allocate an EQA to do this, we call moderation for your center. So then this EQA will contact you by email and ask you to send the documentation to ATAG. And this documentation means the learner work, the plagiarism report, the assignment front sheet for all the learner work, the internal quality assurance sheet for all the sampled units, and if you have had a standardization meeting, then the minutes of those meetings as well. And these would be requested for the samples that the EQA identified. So if you submit 8 learners with, let's say, 8 units completed by each, then probably the EQA would select 1 unit from each learner and request the documentation only for those 8 units. And then if we think additional samples would be needed, then we ask for documentation for additional samples again. Have I answered your question?
Yes. So I get what you mean. I've done this process before. What I'm asking is, in the event that certain students were not, certain units were not completed, when the certificate came in, I have like about 60 units completed. I needed 30 more units to be completed. Do I go through that route afresh again through that portal and submit all the details?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes. Only for the units which were not passed. So either failed or were not included in the. So only those units for which you have no certificate yet.
Yeah. So the last question, you showed a document for the internal quality assurance that had the green, yellow. Can you show that on the screen? Is there? Where did you find?
I think it was the sample plan.
Yeah, the sample.
Yes.
Yeah, that sample plan. Where is it on the portal?
Yes, I couldn't find this on the portal. I'm sorry, but I will check with our IT genius man and ask him to upload this. I'm sorry, I couldn't find this on the portal now. So I either don't know where it is or it's not there yet, but I will have it uploaded today. So it should be under the templates. So when we go to qualification guidance and then we go to, at the bottom, we go to internal into quality assurance, this is where it should be. So now we have a sample internal verification policy, but I don't think this includes the sampling plan. No, it doesn't include the sampling plan. It's just the policy. So I will have it uploaded here.
Okay. Do we have it on in the email you sent? I think no.
No, I haven't sent it.
Yeah,
No,
I don't know.
no, but I can send it to you.
Yeah,
I can send, because I would send you now the value.
I think you can please send that.
Okay. Any more questions?
Okay, so did you confirm that you're going to send it?
I will send it to you after our training. I will send the sampling plan to you.
All right, thank you for that.
Okay, so I will send you a feedback form, and I ask you to. It's brief, it's short to complete it, and I will also initiate the certificates for this training. You will all receive a certificate of completing this training. And with any queries you have on delivery, assessment, moderation, feel free to reach out to me or my colleagues of VST as well. For administration support team, they are the best to help, but I try to be very responsive myself as well. So feel free to contact me too. Thank you very, very much. And special thanks for your active participation, because this makes the training a delight for me too. So thank you so much for being so active with the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We thank you very much. It was very useful, actually. And thank you for certifications, but please put it as a sanction.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks
have
a lot.
lovely day for the rest of the day.
It was great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very
Goodbye
much.
then.
Thank you for everybody.
Yeah, thank
Nice to
you.
meet you all.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, have a good day. Bye.
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 Bye-bye.